My parents told the ER I attempted sewer slide. They don't know the blood samples show that they've been poisoning me. The day my life was saved was when my parents left for their cruise. I ran out the first day they left. Week 1 without medication felt like surfacing from water. My hands were steady for the first time in months. The fog I'd lived in began lifting. Week 2 brought memories disguised as dreams. Jenny, my sister, was 5 years old, getting weaker. My mom said, "The medicine helps, sweetheart." I remembered Jenny's final month, too tired to draw. I called Aunt Eloise. Silence stretched when I asked about Jenny's illness. Your parents cut me off when I questioned the treatment. I decided to snoop and found 3 doctors over 8 months for her. Overlapping benzos that should have been flagged. Behind those, an insurance document. Jenny's life insurance had $200,000 paid out. I checked out my current medication and discovered the doses were dangerous together. Aunt Eloise arrived with Jenny's medical records she'd copied before being cut off. 2 hospitals, both questioning the diagnosis. I documented everything, made copies. My aunt took blood samples to test for current drug levels. My parents returned tanned and relaxed until they saw my empty medication bottles. Mom's face went cold. That night, I caught her checking my pulse while I pretended to sleep. Morning brought crushed pills and orange juice. I saw pieces floating around. I felt like I had no choice but to drink. As my dad stood guard and my mom checked under my tongue. "She's having delusions," Mom told someone on the phone, stopping medication abruptly. They'd been telling relatives I was fragile since college started, building a narrative, emails about my anxiety episodes that were really drug reactions. At dinner, I decided to try and ask them about Jenny, but the moment her name left my lips, they moved fast. Dad restraining, Mom producing a prepared syringe. "She's psychotic," they told police. Stopped critical medication. The ER blood test showed high benzo levels from that morning's juice. They claimed suicide attempt. Showed 8 months of prescriptions. Their lawyer arrived within an hour. There was documentation of my deteriorating mental health, statements from colleagues about their concern for me. The judge reviewed their medical credentials, my current blood levels. I got a 72-hour psychiatric hold granted for evaluation. As orderlies secured me, Mom leaned close and said, "You should have kept taking your medicine." The intake nurse showed me new prescriptions. "Your parents are so worried. They've been managing your care for months." But they didn't know I had a plan. Aunt Eloise had my blood samples showing dangerous drug combinations no ethical doctor would prescribe. Most importantly, the insurance investigator who'd paid out Jenny's claim had flagged irregularities after we contacted him. I thought about Jenny's final days, how they'd isolated her from outside doctors, how home hospice meant no oversight, how a metabolic disorder diagnosis meant expected death, how 8 months ago they'd started the same process with me. Mom had mentioned during the intake that I'd been declining rapidly despite treatment. She came to me privately and said that sometimes families faced impossible decisions, that my life insurance, $150,000 through their policy, would help with Ethan's education. My baby brother, only 3, the same age Jenny was when she started getting sick. I had to survive 72 hours until the hold expired, until Aunt Eloise could file for review, until Dr. Morrison's report reached the right people. The medication hit my bloodstream. The fog descended. Through the haze, I heard Mom telling the nurse about Ethan's recent anxiety, how he might need assessment soon, how sometimes these conditions ran in families. In 3 days, I'd either be free or transferred to long-term care under their guardianship. The first night in the psychiatric ward was rough. The walls were pale green, supposedly calming, but they made me feel nauseated. I palmed the evening pills when the nurse turned away to check her chart, dropped them into my sock, feeling them settle against my ankle. The night nurse was less careful, playing games on her phone during rounds. I tucked those pills into my pillowcase seam, working them deep into the fabric. By morning, I had 6 pills hidden. My head felt clearer already, though I was careful to maintain the sluggish movements they expected. Mom visited during morning rounds. She wore her white coat, the one with Dr. Patricia Lawson embroidered on the pocket. She watched me take the morning dose, standing close enough that I could smell her perfume. I kept it under my tongue until she left, the pills dissolving slightly, leaving a bitter residue. Spit it into a tissue later when the janitor was mopping. The psychiatrist came by around noon. Dr. Patel seemed nice enough, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He asked about my symptoms. I kept my answers vague, letting my words drift. Told him I felt confused, which wasn't entirely a lie. That helped explain any inconsistencies in my story. He increased my dosage. Mom must have called him. I started documenting everything in the journal they gave us for therapy, wrote it like poetry so it wouldn't seem suspicious. Each medication, each dose, each interaction became a verse. The second day, a new patient arrived. Samantha, around my age, with tired eyes and bandaged wrists. Her parents had committed her too. We talked during art therapy, mixing colors that reminded me of Jenny's butterflies. She told me about palming pills, about the blind spots in the medication room, about how to act medicated without being medicated, the slight delay in responses, the unfocused gaze. Her advice saved me. By the end of day 2, I had a system. Pills went into my socks during shift changes, into the mattress seam at night. I flushed some down the toilet when I could, timing it with other noises. The fog lifted more each hour. Mom visited again that evening. She brought Jason. He looked tired, his usually bright eyes dull. Dark circles underneath made him look older than 3. She mentioned he'd been having trouble sleeping, that their pediatrician might prescribe something mild, just to help him rest. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled, acted drowsy, let my words slur slightly. She seemed satisfied, making notes in her phone. After she left, I wrote down everything. Jason's symptoms, her exact words, the way she'd rubbed his back while talking about medication, the same way she'd rubbed mine. The third morning arrived slowly. Aunt Frances would file the paperwork today. Dr. Morrison's report should reach the insurance company. I just had to make it through. But Mom arrived early before breakfast. She'd brought their family lawyer. They had paperwork for extended care, a nice facility upstate, specialized in long-term treatment, private rooms, limited visiting hours. The psychiatrist seemed convinced. My recent behavior showed I needed more help. The medications weren't working fast enough. I needed intensive care. I tried to argue. Mistake. They said I was showing aggression, a sign of my deteriorating condition. Classic symptom of medication non-compliance. The nurse brought extra sedatives. I had to take them. Too many people watching. The pills went down like stones. The room spun. I fought to stay conscious. Through the haze, I heard Mom discussing transport. Tomorrow morning, a private medical transport company. No stops. Straight to the facility. 4 hours away. No cell service for most of the drive. Samantha found me in the common room. She shook me awake. Told me I'd been out for hours. That my aunt had called. The front desk wouldn't put her through. Something about family-only visitation during holds. My parents had updated the list. Only they could visit now. Samantha helped me to the bathroom. I made myself throw up. Got some of the substances out. Not all, but some. My hands shook as I washed my face. In the mirror, I looked like Jenny had near the end. That night, I stayed awake. Wrote down everything I could remember. About Jenny. About the medications. About Jason. Samantha promised to mail it if something happened. She'd hidden the pages in her own journal, between her poems about darkness. The night nurse did rounds every hour. I pretended to sleep. Palmed the nighttime pills again. By morning, I felt almost clear-headed. Almost. The transport arrived at 7. 2 men in medical uniforms. Mom supervised while they prepared me. me. Soft restraints for my safety. She'd brought more medication. For the drive, she said. I couldn't palm these. She watched too carefully. The injection went into my arm. Fast acting, she told the men. I'd sleep for the drive, but I didn't sleep. Not fully. The medication made me drowsy, but something kept me conscious. Maybe all those palmed pills had built up my tolerance. Maybe my body was fighting back. I kept my eyes closed as we drove, feeling every bump and turn of the van. The vinyl seats stuck to my skin where the hospital gown had ridden up. I could smell the industrial disinfectant they'd used to clean the vehicle, mixed with something medicinal and sharp. Listen to Mom talking to the transport guys about the facility, how it specialized in complex cases, how they had excellent success rates with medication-resistant patients, how the isolation helped patients focus on recovery. Her voice had that professional tone she used with other doctors, calm and clinical, like she wasn't discussing locking away her own daughter. The van hit a pothole. My eyes fluttered open for a second. We were on a rural road, trees on both sides, their branches creating a tunnel of green overhead. No other cars, no witnesses. The dashboard clock read 8:15 a.m. We'd been driving for just over an hour. Mom noticed my movement immediately and prepared another syringe. Her movements practiced and efficient. I couldn't fight. The restraints held tight. Leather straps across my wrists and ankles, another across my chest. This dose hit harder. The world went gray at the edges, sounds becoming muffled and distant. But I heard her phone ring, heard her voice change, shifting from calm to concerned. Something about the insurance investigator, about irregularities in the claims, about Jenny's case being reopened. She told the driver to speed up, said I needed immediate care, that any delays could be dangerous. The van lurched forward, engine straining. Through my drugged haze, I saw her texting frantically, her fingers flying across the screen. Dad would meet us at the facility. They needed to finalize paperwork. Something about power of attorney, about making medical decisions if I was deemed incompetent. The legal terms floated through my foggy mind. They were preparing for a long-term commitment, maybe permanent. We stopped for gas about 2 hours in. Mom stayed in the van with me while the drivers went inside. The stop was at an isolated station, the kind with only 2 pumps and a flickering neon sign. She leaned close, her perfume overwhelming in the confined space. Told me this was for my own good, that I was sick like Jenny, that fighting would only make it worse. Her hand was cold on my forehead, checking for fever that didn't exist. She mentioned Jason again, how he'd been asking about me, how confused he was by my behavior, how they'd had to explain that sometimes people's brains got sick, that sometimes medicine was the only answer, how he'd cried when they said I couldn't come home for a while. I tried to speak. My tongue felt thick, like cotton had been stuffed in my mouth. Managed to ask about Jenny's real diagnosis. The words came out slurred, barely intelligible. Mom's face hardened, her caring mask slipping for just a moment. She said Jenny had been genuinely ill, that they'd done everything possible, that questioning their care was another symptom of my paranoia, another sign of how sick I'd become. She prepared another dose, drawing clear liquid from a vial I couldn't read, said it would help me rest. The needle went in, a sharp sting in my upper arm. Darkness pulled at me, heavier than before, but something woke me, shouting, loud voices cutting through the chemical fog. The van had stopped. Through blurry vision, I saw police lights painting red and blue across the trees, heard Aunt Frances's voice high and urgent. She was arguing with Mom, something about an emergency court order, about immediate evaluation by an independent physician. Mom was showing paperwork, medical credentials, transportation orders. The officers looked confused, shifting their weight uncertainly. 2 doctors disagreeing about a patient. Who to believe? I tried to call out, but my voice wouldn't work. Then Dr. Morrison arrived. I'd never met him, but recognized his voice from Aunt Frances's calls, deep, authoritative, used to being listened to. He'd reviewed Jenny's case, found inconsistencies, medications that contradicted each other, doses that exceeded safe limits, dangerous combinations that no competent physician would prescribe. He had a judge's order for my immediate evaluation. Mom tried to argue, said he had no jurisdiction, that I was her patient, that interfering with medical transport was a felony. But the papers were clear. The insurance investigation had triggered a review. My case was flagged. Everything had to stop until an independent assessment could be made. They moved me to an ambulance. Real paramedics this time, with gentle hands and worried faces. They checked my vitals, found my blood pressure dangerously low, pupils barely responsive. One of them whistled low, muttering about toxicity levels. The medications in my system were at dangerous levels. They started an IV immediately, pushed fluids to clear the substances. The cold saline burned going in, but it was a clean pain, honest. Mom tried to follow. The police stopped her, said she needed to stay for questioning. About Jenny, about the insurance payouts, about the multiple doctors whose signatures appeared on prescriptions, about a pattern they were just beginning to see. The hospital was different from the psychiatric ward. Bright lights that hurt my eyes, constant monitoring that felt like safety instead of surveillance, real medical equipment, not just restraints and syringes. They ran blood tests every few hours, found combinations of substances that shouldn't exist in one person, benzos at maximum therapeutic dose, antipsychotics I'd never been diagnosed as needing, sedatives that could stop a heart if mixed wrong, all at dangerous levels. Some I'd never even been prescribed. The toxicologist, a young woman with kind eyes, said I was lucky. Another day and organ damage would have started, maybe sooner. My liver was already showing signs of stress. Aunt Frances stayed by my bed. She'd brought a thick folder of documents, pages tagged with colored tabs. She showed me what she'd found, Jenny's real medical records, not the edited versions my parents kept. The original files showed a healthy child, normal blood work just months before she got sick, perfect developmental milestones, then sudden decline, multiple medications appearing in her chart, symptoms that matched benzotoxicity, not metabolic disease. One doctor had even noted concerns in the margins, suggested stopping all medications to see if symptoms improved. My parents had switched doctors the next day. The concerned physician's notes had been buried, almost lost. She'd also pulled my records, found prescriptions I didn't know about, pills prescribed but never given to me, sold, maybe, or saved for later. The paper trail showed severe mental illness progressing rapidly, but the blood tests showed poisoning. Slow, deliberate, carefully calibrated to look like natural decline, just like Jenny. The same patterns, the same progression, the same inevitable ending if she hadn't intervened. The detective came on day 3. Officer Reynolds, a woman with sharp eyes and careful questions. She'd been investigating prescription fraud in the area for 2 years. My parents' names had come up before. Other families with concerns, children with mysterious illnesses, sudden need for expensive treatments, always ending the same way. She needed my statement, every detail, every medium, every interaction. She recorded everything, asked me to go back to the beginning, to Jenny's first symptoms, to my own first doses. I told her about the morning juice, how it always tasted bitter, but Mom said it was the vitamin C, the bedtime checks, the way Mom counted my pulse, timing it with her expensive watch, how Dad blocked exits during medication times, casual but consistent, about Jason showing symptoms, the new complaints of tummy aches, about the life insurance policies I'd found. She wrote it all down in neat handwriting, said they'd been building a case, needed someone willing to testify, someone who'd survived, someone who could explain the inside view. My parents hired expensive lawyers, a whole team from the city, claimed medical necessity, said I was delusional, paranoid. died. That stopping medication had caused psychosis. They had documentation, years of it, carefully crafted medical records showing progressive mental illness, expert opinions from colleagues, test results that seemed to support their diagnosis. But the blood tests told different stories. The timeline didn't match. Prescriptions from doctors who'd never actually seen me, pharmacies in different counties, patterns that suggested fraud, not treatment, pills that appeared in my records but not in my body until recently. The medical board launched an investigation, found more irregularities, patients my parents had treated privately, off the books, cash only. Several had died. All had insurance payouts. All had similar symptoms. The investigation widened. Several other cases. But my parents were the center, the ones who knew exactly which combinations would cause slow decline, which symptoms would seem natural, how to document everything to avoid suspicion. They'd written papers on it, hidden as legitimate research. Jason went to stay with Aunt Frances. She had him tested immediately. Found benzos in his system. Low doses. Just starting. The pediatrician claimed my mom had insisted. Said Jason showed anxiety. Needed early intervention. The prescription was dated 2 weeks ago, right when I'd started refusing pills. They'd already started with him. Already begun the process. The same bitter juice. The same bedtime checks. The same concerned parent act. The facility upstate turned out to be connected to everything. A place where patients went but rarely left. Where medication was administered without oversight. Where families paid cash for long-term care. Several patients had died there. All with large insurance policies. All with my parents listed as consulting physicians. The director was arrested. Records seized. Families notified. Some had been searching for answers for years. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital, detoxing from months of poisoning. The withdrawal was hell. Shaking so hard the bed rattled. Sweating through 3 gowns a day. Hallucinations that might have been memories. Jenny visiting me, warning me, telling me to save Jason. Her butterfly drawings floating in the air. Maybe it was the substances, maybe not, but it kept me fighting, kept me focused on recovery. The nurses were patient, checking on me hourly, adjusting medications to ease the symptoms without adding new dependencies. Mom tried to visit once, claimed she wanted to explain. The guard turned her away. She left a letter. I didn't open it for days. When I did, it was exactly what I expected. Justifications, medical terminology, claims that I didn't understand, that Jenny had been truly sick, that I was misremembering, that Jason needed help, that they were good parents, good doctors. The handwriting got messier toward the end, more desperate. She mentioned the life insurance again, how it was meant for education, for future care, not for them, never for them, as if that made it better. Dad's statement was different. He admitted to the prescriptions, to the multiple doctors, but claimed Mom had orchestrated everything, that he'd been trying to protect us, that he'd wanted second opinions for Jenny but Mom had refused. The detectives didn't believe him. His signature was on too many documents. His medical license had been used for too many prescriptions. He'd been there for every dose, every injection, every decline. Security footage from pharmacies showed him picking up medications. Phone records showed him coordinating with other doctors. The prosecutor built the case slowly, found 12 families with similar stories over 15 years, children with sudden illnesses, mysterious symptoms, expensive treatments that never worked. 7 had died. All had insurance payouts. All had been treated by my parents. The patterns were clear, the evidence overwhelming, but proving murder would be harder. Proving intent, proving they knew the medications would cull. That's where the research papers helped. Academic articles about substance interactions, about long-term effects, all authored by my parents, showing they knew exactly what they were doing. That's where I came in. Star witness, the one who survived, who could describe the methods, the morning juice, the bedtime checks, the careful documentation, the way they'd built a case for mental illness while poisoning me, how they'd isolated me from other doctors, other opinions, how they'd used their medical knowledge to cause symptoms that looked natural, looked expected, looked like tragic illness instead of murder. I could explain the inside view, the family dynamics, the way they'd presented themselves as caring parents while slowly culling their children. The trial date was set, 6 months away. I moved in with Aunt Frances, continued therapy, real therapy this time, learning to trust doctors again, slowly, carefully. My therapist specialized in medical trauma, understood the unique betrayal. Jason lived with us too. He was recovering. The benzos hadn't been in his system long, no permanent damage, but nightmares, confusion, questions about why mommy and daddy gave him medicine that made him sick. We answered as honestly as we could, in words a 4-year-old could understand. We found Jenny's drawings in storage, hundreds of them, butterflies mostly, every species she could find in her books. But toward the end, pictures of pills, medicine bottles, herself in bed, getting smaller in each drawing, mom and dad with needles. She'd known. Somehow, she'd known. But 5-year-olds don't have words for that kind of betrayal. Can't explain that the people meant to protect them are the danger. Can only draw. Hope someone sees. Someone understands. I framed her last butterfly, a monarch, symbol of transformation she never got to complete. I started a support group, found others like me, survivors of medical abuse, people whose families had used medicine as a weapon. We met weekly in a church basement, shared stories, shared healing. Some had lost siblings, some had lost children, all had lost trust. But together we found strength, found voices, found ways to prevent it happening again. We created resources, warning signs to watch for, questions to ask doctors, ways to verify prescriptions. The investigation revealed more. My parents had been running seminars, teaching other medical professionals about difficult patients, about treatment-resistant conditions. The real purpose was teaching fraud, how to document false symptoms, how to avoid detection, how to maximize insurance payouts. The network was larger than anyone imagined. Dozens of doctors involved, hundreds of victims, thousands of fake prescriptions, a whole economy built on suffering. 3 months before trial, mom made bail, disappeared the same night, left dad to face charges alone. Police found her car at the Canadian border, empty. She'd had an escape plan, fake documents, hidden money, years of preparation for this possibility. International warrants were issued, her medical license revoked, but she was gone, vanished into a system she knew how to manipulate. We hired private investigators, posted rewards, nothing. Dad's lawyer tried to make a deal, testified against the network in exchange for lesser charges, named names, revealed methods, showed how the system worked, how they'd identified vulnerable families, how they'd created symptoms that matched rare diseases, how they'd used legitimate medical knowledge for illegitimate purposes. His testimony led to more arrests, more investigations, more families getting answers about loved ones who died, but it didn't absolve him. Couldn't, but I still had to testify, had to face him in court, describe how my own father had held me down while my mother injected me, how they'd planned to cull me slowly, make it look natural, collect the insurance, move on to Jason. The prosecutor showed my blood work, the toxic levels, the combinations no real doctor would prescribe, showed Jenny's records, the similarities, the pattern. I identified pills, described tastes, explained how they'd hidden substances in food, in drinks, even in the toothpaste. Dad's defense was that he'd been trying to help, that he'd believed the diagnoses, believed the treatments were necessary, but cross-examination destroyed that. Text messages between him and mom, discussions of dosages, of timing, of which symptoms would seem most convincing, of how long the process process should take, of insurance policies and payouts, spreadsheets calculating profits. The jury saw it all. The planning, the preparation, the cold calculation of culling your own children for money. The verdict came back guilty on all counts. Murder for Jenny, attempted murder for me, conspiracy, fraud, prescription trafficking. The judge gave maximum sentences, life without parole. Dad showed no emotion as they led him away, just stared at me, maybe with hate, maybe with regret. I'll never know, don't want to know. I didn't look away, wanted him to see me, alive, strong, surviving despite him. Mom was caught 6 months later, living under a false name in Mexico, working at a clinic, treating children. Local police found benzos in her apartment, prescription pads, insurance forms. She'd been starting again, new country, new victims, new plans. The extradition took time, but eventually she faced trial too. Same charges, same evidence, same result, life without parole. She tried to make eye contact during sentencing. I looked at Jenny's butterfly instead. The other doctors in the network got various sentences. Some claimed ignorance, some made deals, some fled like Mom had tried to. But the network was broken, the system exposed, new regulations put in place, better tracking of prescriptions, better oversight of home care, mandatory second opinions for certain diagnoses. It wouldn't prevent everything, but it would make it harder, make it riskier, save some lives. We pushed for Jenny's law, requirements for independent review of children on multiple psychotropic medications. Jason doesn't remember much. He's 5 now. Same age Jenny was. Healthy, happy, draws butterflies like she did, but also rockets, dinosaurs, normal kid things. Aunt Frances adopted him officially. I couldn't. Still dealing with my own recovery, my own trust issues, but I see him daily. Make sure he's safe. Make sure no one hurts him. Make sure he knows he's loved, protected, that not all medicine is bad, not all doctors are dangerous, that his story will be different. We'll have a happy ending. I went back to college, studied pharmacology, wanted to understand what they'd done to me, to Jenny, how medications meant to heal had been weaponized, how knowledge meant to help had been perverted, graduated with honors, work now with medical review boards, investigating suspicious prescribing patterns, catching what others miss, using what I survived to protect others. Every case I review, I think of Jenny, of Jason, of all the children who need someone to see the patterns. Some days are hard. Anxiety that's real this time, not substance-induced. Trust issues with medical professionals. Panic at the smell of certain medications. But therapy helps. Real therapy. Support groups help. Knowing I stopped them helps. Knowing Jason is safe helps. Knowing other families won't suffer helps. It's not perfect, not complete healing, but it's progress. It's survival. It's victory. It's choosing to live every day, to thrive despite them. The life insurance money went to victims' families. Judge ordered my parents' assets liquidated. Houses, cars, retirement accounts, investment portfolios, even Mom's jewelry, Dad's watch collection, everything bought with blood money, distributed to survivors, to families of those who didn't survive. Blood money returned. Not enough, never enough, but something. Acknowledgement, justice, closure for some. We used part of it to fund research, to create education programs, to ensure knowledge is used to heal, not harm. I keep Jenny's butterfly drawings framed in my apartment, reminders of what was lost, what was stolen, but also of beauty, of innocence, of a little girl who loved color and wing patterns and transformation, who never got to transform herself, never got to spread her own wings, but whose memory helps me spread mine, helps me fly, helps me fight, helps me ensure no other butterflies get their wings clipped by those meant to help them soar. Her favorite was the blue morpho. Brilliant, iridescent, impossible to ignore. The support group has grown. Hundreds of members now. Survivors, family members, medical professionals who want to understand, want to prevent. We share resources, warning signs, legal advice, emotional support. We testify at trials, advocate for better laws, create awareness, turn our trauma into action, our pain into purpose, our survival into strength for others. We've helped pass legislation in 3 states, working on federal laws now. Sometimes I dream about that morning juice. Wake up tasting bitterness. Check my pulse like Mom used to. Count the beats. Make sure they're steady, strong, mine, not slowed by substances, not controlled by anyone else. Just my heart, beating, surviving, proving them wrong with every pulse, every breath. Every day I wake up and choose to keep going, keep fighting, keep living the life they tried to steal, the life Jenny deserved, the life every child deserves. Jason asked about them recently, why Mommy and Daddy went away. Aunt Frances and I had prepared for this, explained simply, age appropriately, that sometimes people make bad choices, hurt others, that his parents had been sick in a different way, a thinking sickness, that made them do wrong things, but that he was safe now, loved now, would always be protected. He accepted it with 5-year-old wisdom, asked if we could get ice cream, moved on, resilient, unbroken, everything they'd tried to destroy. We got chocolate, his favorite, no bitter aftertaste. The medical community has changed some, more awareness, more oversight, mandatory reporting of unusual prescription patterns, reviews of child deaths involving multiple medications. It's not enough, will never be enough, but it's movement, progress, lives saved because of lives lost, because of Jenny, because of what almost happened to me, because we spoke up, fought back, refused to be silent statistics. Medical schools now include courses on recognizing abuse, on ethical prescribing, on protecting vulnerable patients. I think about the others who weren't saved, the 12 families the prosecutor found, others who probably existed but left no trail, children whose deaths were attributed to mysterious illnesses, whose parents grieved publicly while counting insurance money privately, who never had an Aunt Frances, never had blood tests saved, never had someone question the narrative. I carry them too, fight for them too, speak for them when I testify, when I train medical boards, when I review suspicious cases. Their voices matter, their stories matter, their lives mattered. Recovery isn't linear. Some days I'm strong, confident, ready to take on the world. Other days the smell of orange juice makes me gag. The sight of pills makes me panic. The thought of trusting a doctor seems impossible, but those days get fewer, farther between. The good days multiply, the bad days shrink. Time doesn't heal everything, but it does dull the sharpest edges, makes survival possible, then probable, then certain, makes life not just bearable but beautiful again, makes trust not just possible but necessary, makes love not just a memory but a daily choice, to love Jason, to love Aunt Frances, to love myself despite what they tried to make me, to love Jenny's memory by living fully, completely, defiantly, every breath a rebellion, every heartbeat a victory, every day a gift they tried to steal but couldn't, because I survived, because I'm still here, because I won. The trial started on a Tuesday. I wore Jenny's butterfly necklace, the one she'd loved. Dad sat at the defense table looking smaller than I remembered. His expensive suit couldn't hide how much weight he'd lost. Good. I took the stand and told everything, every medium, every injection, every morning he'd block the door while Mom drugged my juice. The prosecutor showed my blood work on a big screen, toxic levels highlighted in red. The jury looked sick. Dad's lawyer tried to shake my story, asked about my mental health issues. I stayed calm, pointed out those issues only existed on paper, that my blood tests from before their treatment showed normal levels, that symptoms started after medication, not before. He asked why I'd waited to report it. I explained about the fog, about not remembering, about pieces coming together only after I stopped taking pills. He had no real defense, just desperate attempts to make me look crazy. The other witnesses destroyed him. Dr. Morrison explained the substance interactions, how no competent doctor would prescribe those combinations, how the doses exceeded all safety guidelines. The insurance investigator showed the paperwork, policies taken out right before symptoms started, payouts processed suspiciously fast. Aunt Frances testified about being cut off when she questioned Jenny's treatment, about finding me barely conscious, about the blood samples she'd saved. Each testimony built the case higher, made escape impossible. The prosecution showed text messages between my parents, Dad writing about timeline adjustments, Mom responding about maintaining therapeutic appearance, discussions of my deterioration schedule, cold, clinical, planning my death like a business transaction. One text stood out, Dad asking if they should slow down after Jenny, Mom saying no. That grief would explain any changes in their behavior, that I was already prepped. The jury shifted in their seats. Some looked at Dad with disgust. They brought in other families. The Andersons lost their daughter Emma 3 years ago. Mysterious metabolic disorder. Same symptoms as Jenny. Same insurance payout. Same cremation instead of autopsy. Then Guyens' son David, the Patel twins, all treated by my parents. All died within a year of diagnosis. All had policies that paid out to trust my parents helped establish. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't malpractice. It was murder. Systematic. Profitable. Hidden behind medical degrees. Dad took the stand on day 4. Claimed he was manipulated by Mom. That she'd convinced him the treatments were necessary. That he'd trusted her expertise. But the prosecutor had receipts. Literally. Dad had purchased medications. Researched substance interactions. Written prescriptions when Mom was out of town. He'd been at every appointment. Held me down for injections. His tears on the stand looked rehearsed. Probably were. He'd had months to practice. The jury didn't buy it. Mom's arrest made things easier. Mexican authorities found evidence in her apartment. New victims. New plans. Same methods. She'd been treating a 6-year-old boy. Parents thought he had anxiety. She'd started him on benzos. Low doses. Building up. The boy's blood work showed early signs of toxicity. His parents had noticed him getting worse. Getting tired. Losing interest in soccer. If she hadn't been caught, he would have been another dead child. Another insurance payout. Another family destroyed. The prosecutor's closing argument was brutal. Showed photos of Jenny. Healthy at 4. Sick at 5. Dead before 6. Showed my progression. College athlete to barely functional. Showed Jason's early blood work. The pattern starting again. He called them predators. Using medical knowledge to hunt their own children. Using trust to cull. Using love as a weapon. The defense's closing was weak. Talked about mental strain. About difficult decisions. About context. But context doesn't excuse murder. Doesn't excuse poisoning children for money. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Came back with guilty verdicts on everything. Murder. Attempted murder. Fraud. Conspiracy. Racketeering. The list went on. Dad stared straight ahead as they read each count. No emotion. Maybe he'd used up all his fake tears on the stand. The judge scheduled sentencing for next month. Revoked bail. Dad went to jail in handcuffs. I watched them lead him away. Felt nothing. Maybe relief. Maybe emptiness. Definitely not sadness. Between Dad's trial and Mom's extradition, I focused on healing. Real healing this time. Found a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Worked through the betrayal, the confusion, the guilt about surviving when Jenny didn't. Some days were harder than others. Panic attacks in pharmacies. Nightmares about morning juice. But progress came. Slowly. Steadily. I started trusting again. Eating without fear. Sleeping without checking my pulse. Small victories that felt huge. Mom's trial was worse. She tried to represent herself at first. Spouted medical jargon. Claimed conspiracy. Said the Mexican evidence was planted. That she'd fled because of persecution, not guilt. The judge appointed a lawyer when she started ranting about medical freedom. About parental rights. About government overreach. Her lawyer tried an insanity defense. Said she'd broken from reality. Believed she was helping. The prosecution's expert shut that down. Showed her meticulous planning. Her careful documentation. Her profit calculations. Insane people don't keep spreadsheets of murder. She took the stand against her lawyer's advice. Tried to explain her treatment philosophy. How traditional medicine had failed Jenny. How she'd tried alternative approaches. How I'd been showing early symptoms. How prevention was key. The prosecutor let her talk. Let her hang herself with every word. Then showed her own research papers. Articles about substance interactions. About fatal combinations. About how to mask toxicity. Written years before Jenny got sick. She'd known exactly what would happen. Had published it. Had taught it. The Mexican evidence sealed it. Photos of the boy she'd been treating. His medical files. Prescriptions in her handwriting. Same substances. Same doses. Same progression. She'd learned nothing. Changed nothing. Would have kept kelling if not caught. The boy's parents testified by video. Described their confusion. Their trust. Their growing fear as their son got sicker. Their relief when police arrested her. Their horror when they learned the truth. Mom showed no remorse. Just kept insisting she was helping. Her sentencing was brutal. Life without parole. Consecutive sentences ensuring she'd die in prison. The judge called her a monster. Said medical knowledge came with responsibility. That she'd perverted her oath. Betrayed the most sacred trust. Culled for profit. She tried to speak. The judge cut her off. Said she'd heard enough. That words couldn't undo the damage. Couldn't bring back the dead. Couldn't heal the survivors. Mom was led away in shackles. Still claiming innocence. Still playing the victim. With both parents convicted, the real work began. Helping other families. We created a foundation in Jenny's name. Funding research into medical child abuse. Training doctors to recognize signs. Supporting families seeking second opinions. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of families reached out. Suspicious symptoms. Questionable treatments. Doctors who wouldn't listen. We connected them with resources. Independent physicians. Legal aid. Sometimes just someone who believed them. The medical board hearings were rough. Dozens of doctors connected to my parents. Some knowingly involved. Others negligent. A few genuinely fooled. Each hearing meant reliving details. Explaining methods. Showing evidence. But also meant accountability. Licenses revoked. Practices closed. Patients protected. The network had been vast. Profitable. Organized. But we dismantled it piece by piece. Testimony by testimony. Hearing by hearing. Justice by justice. Jason started kindergarten that fall. Normal kid in a normal school. No medications. No mysterious symptoms. No doctors except for checkups. He made friends easily. Loved story time. Excelled at art like Jenny had. His teacher said he was thriving. Bright. Happy. Healthy. Everything my parents had tried to steal. Aunt Frances cried at his first parent-teacher conference. Good tears. Grateful tears. Tears for the future he'd have. The future Jenny should have had. I graduated with my pharmacology degree. Started working with the state medical board. Reviewing prescription patterns. Flagging suspicious combinations. Training investigators. Every case reminded me why I was there. Protected another child. Prevented another Jenny. My supervisor said I had a gift for spotting patterns. I told her it wasn't a gift. It was experience. Hard-won. Blood-bought. But useful now. Turned from weapon against me to tool for others. The support group grew into a national organization. Chapters in every state. Online resources. Annual conferences. We shared stories. Strategies. Strength. Created protocols for hospitals. Checklists for parents. parents, training for social workers. Some members were doctors themselves, horrified by what their colleagues had done, determined to prevent it. We built bridges, changed systems, saved lives. Not enough to balance the losses, but something. Progress. Hope. 1 year after the trials, we held a memorial. Not just for Jenny, for all of them. Emma Anderson, David Nguyen, the Patel twins, others we'd found, others we'd never know. Released butterflies in a park. Hundreds of them. Monarchs like Jenny loved. Watched them rise into blue sky. Free. Beautiful. Transformed. Parents cried. Siblings remembered. Survivors stood together. Strong. Unbroken. Alive despite everything. Because of everything.